Good afternoon, members. I welcome you to the Financial Reporting Student Engagement Seminar. And so far I'm seeing 44 participants. CPA Bonaventure, should we wait for the numbers to rise or we start?
Maybe let us give them 5 minutes and we'll see.
So members, you're most welcome. We are going to give our fellow students that intend to attend the webinar some additional 4 minutes or 3 minutes for them to join us. But otherwise, you're most welcome.
Okay, thank you, Claire.
So I think we are going to officially start. Good afternoon, members. CPA Bonaventure, confirm if you can hear me.
Yes, Claire, I can hear you.
Yes. So good afternoon, members.
Good afternoon
we are here
to you.
for the Financial Reporting Student Engagement webinar. I welcome all of you. As we stand, we are 62 participants, and I think that is a good number to start. Before I introduce, so I give a brief profile of our presenter. I would like to inform you that we shall have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. And I encourage members to post their questions, their comments, their concerns in line with financial reporting in the Q&A section. This afternoon, we have our presenter as CPA Duhimbaze Bonaventure. CPA Bonaventure is married, is a finance and accounting associate consultant at the Uganda Management Institute. Is currently the principal internal auditor at the Uganda National Bureau of Standards. He has worked both as an internal auditor in the internal audit department, as well as a compliance officer in domestic taxes department at the Uganda Revenue Authority. CPA Bonaventure has experience in banking, in project management and accounting and reporting obtained while working as a project accountant. CPA Bonaventure, as usual, I'm excited, and I know the rest of the members are excited to hear from you in line and in regard to financial reporting. CPA Bonaventure, you're most welcome.
Okay, thank you, Claire. And maybe to the attendees, I urge you that if you have some expectations, also you type them in the Q&A. Claire will take note of them. And at the end of the presentation and the Q&A session, we shall evaluate whether we shall have achieved your expectations. And I hope I will meet your expectations. I see Josephine Sela is asking how long is the engagement going to run for? Maybe for that one I can answer. I have 2 hours from 2 to 4.
Maybe I can answer. Yes, we are going to run for 2 hours, but I think CPA Bonaventure will be presenting. He's allowed to present for 1.5 hours, so he can even present for a shorter time, and then we shall have a Q&A, and that will be the end of financial reporting. And thereafter, we shall have advanced taxation engagement that will start from 5 to 7.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Let me share my screen. And okay. Once again, I greet you, good afternoon. And I'm just going to present about financial reporting. Currently, it's called paper 8. I don't know when they review the new syllabus that is starting in June. Maybe it may be called a different paper, but for now, it's paper 8. Basically, my presentation is going to cover, as usual, a brief introduction, the overview of the syllabus under CPA 8, what is expected of the candidates, and if I look at the relevance comes in because of the fact that when you look at the questions and the past papers, how they are set, you will find that they try to bring the application of the paper to the day-to-day life. So it's not about having the knowledge that is within the paper, but the bottom line is that after getting knowledge, you must know how to apply it. And that's why the questions that are coming nowadays are somehow trying to speak to the environment, the real life environment where you can apply financial reporting paper 8. Then we shall see why candidates normally fail, and we shall try to conclude. It looks to be simple, but and it may be brief, but I urge the participants that maybe they can take notes somehow, because I may talk much than what is in the presentation. Okay, I proceed. Basically, our introduction, we are going to look at this paper. Basically, financial reporting is one of the 5 papers on level 2, and it builds on understanding of paper 1, that's financial accounting. And at the same time, it prepares you for paper 13, currently in the current syllabus. What do I mean when I say this? The question is that if you passed financial accounting paper 1 by chance, maybe you spotted, and by any chance you passed, there are some aspects in paper 1 that may keep referring to that are going to be applicable in this paper, paper 8. Meaning sometimes you may need to go back and read in paper 1 certain aspects, because even if you are studying and maybe you're being taught from school A or school B, the person of facilitating you may think these are obvious things which you are supposed to have covered in paper 1. So if you need to get them or you don't grasp the concept, you may need to go back to paper 1 to appreciate the knowledge got from paper 1 and its application to paper 8. Then, of course, if you go to paper 13 will examine you based on the fact that you are going to apply the knowledge of paper 1, financial accounting, and the knowledge of paper 8, financial reporting. So you don't go to paper 13 thinking that what is in paper 13 is going to be applied in paper 13. It's basically according to the syllabus, but the concept behind it is that you have the knowledge of paper 1 and paper 8. So you don't look at these papers in isolation of the other. Then I'm saying that it's always a 3-hour exam and 15 minutes of reading time. Section A has 40 marks and it's a compulsory question. And section B has 20 marks, has 4 questions of 20 marks, but optional. You select 3 questions, which gives you a total of 60. When you add on the 40 of section A, it gives you 100. But a point to note here, and what candidates have to note, is that you'll find mostly this paper will be covering the minimum of 7 pages and can go as up to 10 pages. But the question is, if you know you are going to attempt question 1 and it's a compulsory question, and maybe it is covering 2 pages, in order to manage time, why wouldn't you begin with section B that is optional and maybe the questions are shorter? And if when you are reading a question that you want to attempt, it's better you begin with the required. If you begin with the required, you get to know what the examiner is testing. And after knowing what the examiner is testing, even in your mind, you decide whether you can attempt or whether you can't attempt, than wasting time to read the question and when you reach on the required, you can't attempt. So I always advise that it's better to first read the required. If you find you can attempt, then as you read the question, the mind is already tickling on the required. You can be able to connect. Otherwise, when you begin reading the question minus reading the required, you will reach the required and you find you have to read the question again. For purposes of time management, that's how you can manage time. Then you must know that I must leave maybe 1 hour allocated to question 1, such that whatever you do for section B must be done in the 2 hours, and you are left with at least 1 hour to attempt to question 1, because whether you want it, you must attempt it. Then I'm saying this paper equips the students with analytical and evaluation skills necessary for preparing financial statements, the analysis, and providing the useful information to various stakeholders. This paper, when you are reading for it, you must understand what is its intent. So a candidate must be able to analyze and evaluate financial statements prepared and be able to advise accordingly. We have some learning outcomes. We have some learning outcomes, and the learning outcomes basically they are basically 6. When you look at learning outcomes, what the candidate has to know is 1, is that as you read and prepare for the examination, a candidate must understand that all of these learning outcomes have been achieved because they are the ones that are going to be examined in the paper. The learning outcome number 1 is that you must be able to measure the elements of financial statements. This learning outcome number 1 may appear to have appeared on financial accounting, but it could have been covered on a lighter note. What are the, here a person must know what are the elements of financial statements before you can know how to measure them. Can I define what are the elements? I hope candidates you are noting. Some people will find the elements may be taken to be the financial statements, but ideally that's wrong. The elements are what is in those financial statements. Now, if you go to financial accounting here, you are basically looking at the accounting equation. Basically, because the elements we have incomes or revenues, we have expenses, we have assets, we have liabilities, we have equity, we have the notes to the financial statements. Basically, those are the elements. Now, when you are looking at the measurement of the elements, you must know how to measure revenue. You must know how to measure an expense. You must know how to measure asset, how to measure liability, how to measure equity. So when you talk about the measurements, now when I mention revenue, expenses, assets, liabilities, and equity, you realize that I have talked about different standards. If I talk about the measurement of revenue, basically that's IFRS 15. If I talk about expenses, there are many different standards that take care of the expenses. Each standard probably could be taking care of an expense. When you look at the recognition criteria and application of each of the standards, you'll find there is an expense. When you look at assets, you will find that you are referring to very many standards. When I look at liabilities, the same. When I look at equity, still the same. Now, my question is, when you go to standards as they are spelled out in the syllabus under P8 paper, you should be able to interlink it with the measurement of the elements of financial statements, because each of these standards is either referring to any of the elements. I hope we are together. Then the learning outcome number 2, we look up to preparation of financial statements. After knowing how to measure the elements of financial statements, then you must be able to prepare the financial statements. Then after preparing them, then you must be able to know how to analyze and interpret the information they are in the financial statements. Then you will find that under the learning outcome of 4 is the application of various international financial reporting standards specified in the syllabus. Now, this number 4, there is a way it is connecting to number 2 and number 1, because some of the standards will be implied in the preparation of financial statement. Then we have a learning outcome that separated is preparation of consolidated financial statements of a simple group. That one we're talking about IFRS 10 and IFRS 3. Then we're looking at learning outcome number 6, prepare accounting records for entities under receivership and liquidation. This is always a shallow area of learning outcome number 6. And whenever it comes, I think its approach has never changed. It is basically a shallow end. So it doesn't have wide coverage. But nevertheless, we shall see how to answer. But ideally, for each learning outcome, a student must be able to understand and see how to apply and achieve each of these learning outcomes if you are preparing for this paper. I hope there we are together. Then when you look at the syllabus coverage, it's always advised that if you're preparing for this paper, you don't prepare beyond the syllabus. As I was reading through the learning outcomes, you realize, and I was mentioning the measurement of the elements of financial statements, you realize I mentioned a number of these standards, but it's better that as a student, you know that IS1 is in there, IS7 is there, accounting policies and changes in accounting estimates and errors there, revenue, income taxes, PPE, leases, inventory, government grants, effect of change in foreign exchange rates, borrowing costs, impairment, provisions, intangible assets, investment property, agriculture. Then we have IFRS 3, which talks about consolidated financial statements. We have IFRS 6 that talks about exploration. The IFRS 10 that talks about business combination. Then we have IFRS 13 that talks about fair value. You realize that if you look at the application of fair value, you may need to apply it in learning outcome number 1, which talks about the measurement of the elements of financial statements. So you'll find that there is a way these standards, they are interlinked. And that's why I always say, even in the last presentation we had in August, I mentioned it, that as you are preparing for this paper, you must see how these standards connect to each other. Because when you come to real life, some of the questions that come into play will be picked from a real life scenario, such that if you are able to appreciate, then you can go back to the workplace and be able to apply the knowledge you've acquired. It's not that the paper is always set to fail a student, as I always hear, but it's set to always prepare a student to be able to apply the acquired knowledge in the real life environment. Because the real life environment will call for different things. And maybe the way the standard is written may need more analysis for it to come up to the real life environment. So it's better to know how these standards connect and integrate to each other. Okay, what is expected of the candidate? We have during preparation, candidates need to have or should have covered at least 80%, if not 100% of the syllabus. So you'll find someone has just read 4 or 5 standards, they say, let me go and attempt, maybe chance will knock and I pass. Really, it may not be, the results may not come out of your favor, in your favor, because you need to have prepared at least 80, if not 100% of the syllabus. And number 2, you must know the application of the different aspects of the paper in the real life, because a question is going to come when it is referring to the real life. Someone has been faced by a challenge and probably has been guided by someone and maybe has approached you for advice as a student of this paper. So you should be in a position to give this person objective and correct advice based on the prevailing standards applicable. Then you must also develop an understanding of how the different standards can be integrated or connected in the comprehensive scenario. This one is, that's what I was trying to say, that how would I know that fair value will be applied here? Fair value, the content or the concept you can be having in it in the head, but the question is, so what? Where can I apply it and how? That becomes the key. Otherwise, knowing the contents of fair value, anyone can know, but the question is, wow, so what? How does it apply? So you may find when you are measuring the elements of financial statements, you may need to use fair value measurement. Meaning there, if the elements of financial statements are assets, in this case, maybe if it is PPE, which is about size 16, and you are using fair value measurement, then it means you are going to use IFRS 13 to determine values to consider under IS 16. Do you see the integration? I hope that you see the integration. or the effect of IFRS 13 in I-16. Or sometimes you will find that you are using IFRS 13 to go and determine some items in investment property, that's under IAS 40 or under agriculture 41. Are we together? You see the connection? So you must know where does this one apply and how can it apply. I hope the candidates are taking notes. And if maybe you are going to do revision and you are going to a certain tutor, that's the information you must ascertain. Because the question may come talking about those connections. Then you must know the effect of the different standards in the preparation of financial statements. After understanding the standard, if PPE does A, B, C, D, E, what is its effect in the preparation of financial statements? The question is, can I be able to prepare a financial statement extract? For example, in the September sitting, there was a question that was talking about borrowing costs. That was, I think, question 4. And it was basically trying to ascertain the costs that can easily be capitalized. Now, if the costs are going to be capitalized, what does it mean when you are preparing the financial statement? It means the item you are developing, you are going to get its cost and you add borrowing costs that are being capitalized to get to know the value of the item in the statement of financial position. If we are looking at the borrowing costs that are going to be expensed in that period, then it means that one that is going to be expensed is going to appear as an expense under statement profit or loss and other comprehensive income. That's what I'm trying to know, the effect in the different standards of the different standards in the preparation of financial statements. I hope there we are together. So if you cannot ascertain such an effect, you will realize that even preparing financial statements will become a problem. And what you should know when I said that you must borrow information from financial accounting 1, that's paper 1. Like for the concept of assets, the accounting equation, assets equals capital plus liabilities. You realize that this, when you are preparing financial statements, we are basically basing on this accounting equation. And this is reflected in statement of financial position. And you will remember that in the statement of financial position, assets will appear on their side, capital and liabilities will also appear on their side. But I wouldn't expect someone to be getting an asset or a liability and you record it as if it is an asset. We still go back to the elements of financial statements. Do you know what is an asset? Do you know what is a liability? Do you know what is the capital? Do you know what is revenue? Do you know what is an expense? And do you know where each of them should be? This is basically simple knowledge, but you will find that each standard covered under this paper will either give rise to an asset or to a liability or to an income or to an expense. The question is, I should be able to identify that this is an income, this is an expense, this is an asset, this is a liability. And I should be able to know where these ones are included in the preparation of financial statements. If you can't, then passing this paper is close to remote. Okay, I think we'll go ahead. Then during the examination, I already talked about how can you save time. How can you save time? You already know you're going to attempt question 1. Why should we waste a lot of time reading question one? Go to the optional questions. Begin by reading the required. After seeing that the required, you can attempt, then go and read the question. So that as you are reading the question, your mind is equal to what the examiner requires you to do. So there you save time. Then you must apply the acquired knowledge to scenarios given in the question. I want to give an example, which I have always given anyway. Ideally, between you and me, if someone pressed there a building, if you saw someone that owns a building, automatically IS-16 PPE comes into your mind. But if this building is owned by someone who is trading in buildings, the building will become inventory. So your application of IS-16 goes off your mind, and now you start looking at IS-2. Or if someone is having this building to earn himself or herself rentals, then this building ceases to become IS-16 and it becomes investment property. Now we start applying the requirements of IS-40. Now, you cannot be able to internalize that if you have not read the scenario in the question and understand it. Someone is likely to be owning buildings. A number of them are falling under IS-40. Others are falling under IS-16. Others are falling under IS-2. I hope I'm speaking to your mind. So when you read the question, you should be able to internalize that whereas the items are ideally falling under IS-16, then ideally some of these items are falling under IS-2, others are under IS-40, others are under IS-16. So the treatment completely changes and differs. So that's why you must understand the scenario given in the question. Someone owns buildings or is constructing buildings for resale. That one becomes inventory. But during the process of construction, it may become PPE, but when it is completed, it becomes inventory. So if someone has borrowed funds and is using those borrowed funds to construct such a kind of a building, so what you are going to capitalize, you are going to capitalize up to the point of completion, and after completion, the item is going to turn out maybe to be investment property or become out inventory. So you must understand. The other point in the question, maybe I can leave it to your mind in addition to this. For example, I want to look at, is there anybody who comes from the East? I assume so. I assume so. And I'm thinking that those people who use cows to dig, or who use donkeys for transport, how would you treat those donkeys and those cows? Should they be treated under agriculture, even though they are biological assets? Or they are ideally PPE? That's food for thought. If you come to our Uganda police, the dogs they use it for detective, to help in detecting in the security checks and whatever not. Are those dogs under agriculture or ideally are under PPE? I don't know, but it's food for thought for you. But ideally, when you look at the item, it may ideally be looking as if it falls under agriculture, but in actual sense, it may not be falling under agriculture because of its use. Because I doubt whether a dog that is being used by police during detective work is the same as the way you would treat a dog that you are rearing at home to give out puppies for you to resell. I think that's food for thought, and I think you can think through it. But that's basically about how to use the acquired knowledge to scenarios given in the question. And there you must also manage the time very well. I already talked about it. And also avoid attempting less than the required number of questions. Because the question is that if you are to attempt 4 questions, number 1 compulsory and the other 3 in section B, if you attempt less, chances of passing them with a higher mark is limited for you to be able to aggregate the pass mark. So ideally, you have to manage your time properly. Then we have to look at understanding the skills of the examiner is testing. Basically, I've talked about it that you have to look at the application of the knowledge to specific business scenarios. I was giving a scenario where someone is building houses for resale. I've already given you a scenario where people use cows to dig. I've already given you a scenario where people use dogs to do detective work. So my question is, those different items ideally, even though they fall under different standards, but when you look at the scenario in the question, it may ideally change the application. Something may be looked at property, plant and equipment when ideally it is a biological asset. Or something may look to be inventory when even is a biological asset, I don't know. For example, if someone is trading in cows, what would the person, though you are trading in biological assets now, don't they fall to become inventory? If your business is buying and selling of cows, doesn't cows become inventory? But the idea they are biological assets and they fall under IS 41 and agriculture. So I'm saying that keen interest must be made on the new standards and their effective dates. I think we have like a construction contracts went away and the revenue and all of them were replaced by FRS 15. IS 17, which was talking about leases, was replaced by IFRS 16. So sometimes when you are preparing, you may need to know when a standard was effective, other than reading based on an old standard, and yet the question is going to come integrating the changes that have made to the standard. What are the examiner's expectations? When you look at the measurement of the elements of financial statements, income, expense, assets, liabilities, equity, it is mentioned them. Candidates should know that what each of these elements mean and the conditions for their recognition and measurement in the financial statements. You realize that every standard you cover under this paper has an effect in the financial statements. So if you can't identify the effect in the financial statements in form of a financial statement extract, even when you are given to prepare financial statements and an additional note is there talking about the standard, its adjustment is hard for you. Okay, maybe hard for you to apply. I'm talking about that in September 2022, question 4. The borrowing costs candidates failed in the report. They were saying that candidates failed to identify borrowing costs that are supposed to be capitalized and expensed. The question 5 of the same, that candidates were not able, it's a type, were not able to determine the revenue to be recognized in a given period, and which asset or which liability is to be recognized, because there is a way IFRS 15 was connected with IS 21. someone provided a service and he was to be paid in foreign currency and billed in foreign currency and was to be paid. So you are recognizing the revenue. So the aspects of IFRS 15 apply, but at the same time, you are applying also the aspects of IAS 21. So at the same time, you must know, if I'm to recognize this revenue, what exchange rate am I going to use? So the two apply at the same time. And if at all I have been maybe paid money in advance, then which liability or which asset am I going to recognize at a certain time? I hope you see the connection. So you must realize that some of these standards are easy to be integrated with each other. I think the other time, I don't know which sitting, this is where they were talking about government grants, and I think they came up in form of agriculture. Was it in form of seedling, something like that? So you can see the integration of those standards, but basically that is the reality that is happening on ground. So it's not about knowing the standard, but the question is how the standard can be applied in different scenarios. Then the key point of preparation of consolidated financial statements, and the issues here is that if you look at preparation of consolidated financial statements, if there is an acquisition, you must know the form of consideration that was paid or that is payable. It may be cash, it may be a deferred amount that is to be received in the future. It may be in the form of an exchange. So why am I trying to say this? If you are preparing for this paper, at least you must know if there is a consideration to be paid. It can be cash, it can be deferred consideration, and be an exchange. So the question is, in each of these, what happens? How can you arrive at the full consideration when you are computing goodwill? If it is deferred consideration, do you have in mind that you must discount? If it is an exchange, at what basis are you exchanging and what value are you going to recognize? Because you must compute certain values to be used. Then the key point also in this preparation of consolidated financial statements, you must be able to understand that actually there is a subsidiary and parent relationship. And how can you derive that? And in that respect, you should be able to measure non-controlling interest. And how the non-controlling interest is being measured, depending on which scenario has been given to you, you must be aware of that, because they may be measuring NCI at fair value, or it may be being measured as part of non-assets, of net assets acquired. So the question, that one gives you a basis of computing NCI. I hope I'm speaking to your mind. So when you are preparing, these are some of the aspects you must have on your fingertips. When you're consolidating, care should be taken on a number of aspects, which include, am I going to apportion? You know, consolidating basically is adding parent and subsidiary. The question, am I going to apportion? If I'm going to apportion, what tells me that I should apportion? For example, we are in 2012, 2022. If an entity was acquired in March, and our reporting period, March of 2022, and our reporting period is 31st December 2022, it means when I'm consolidating specifically items of statement of profit or loss, then I must apportion from March onward. But if I acquired this company, if this company was acquired last year, in 2021. And for us, we are consolidating the period of January to December 2022. The aspect of apportionment disappears. So you must take keen interest on the acquisition, when acquisition took place and when the control existed, and the period in which you were consolidating. You see, in the September 2022 question 1, candidates were to apportion for the subsidiary, where we will find in the report they were saying candidates were apportioning for the subsidiary, yet the acquisition had been in January 2019. And the statements to be consolidated were for a period of ended in March 2022, meaning it started April 2021, and the acquisition took place in 2019. So apportioning couldn't have come in someone's mind. But when you look at the report, they were saying that candidates wasted a lot of time apportioning for the subsidiary when it was not necessary. When you read in the report, there is that statement. So it's because the person who, maybe the candidates who were apportioning, had not understood this concept. I don't know whether it is exemplation or whether it is lack of time management, but some of it is lack of failure to articulate the dates and understand how they will apply in the answering. So attention should be put on when the acquisition took place and the period being consolidated. You must be able to create a distinction. Then when you go to preparation of financial statements, like for example, IS1, this is where IS1 is examined at this point. And here candidates need to know the elements of financial statements and their positioning in the financial statements. And here candidates need to know that more than a third of the marks lie within the values given in the question, with no adjustments done to them, just knowing where I should put which value. Now that one, the concept of financial accounting comes into play. Someone who is smart is likely to score marks without adjusting anything, but by just knowing where a value should be placed. So ideally, to me, I see bullet number 1 as 3 marks, as long as you know the accounting equation. 2, candidates need to know how the different standards under the syllabus affect the preparation of financial statements, which I mentioned earlier, and including their extracts. So don't just read the standard and you cannot prepare an extract of its application. So know what items are likely to be affected by this standard in the financial statements. That's why even if they brought preparation of financial statements, statement of profit or loss, statement of financial position, and maybe statement of changes in equity, and they give additional information, you realize when they give additional information, either they are telling you about certain errors or certain things that were not done, which ideally fall under IS8. So you find you are applying IS8 in IS1. And as you apply IS8, you may find each of the errors mentioned or which adjustments given is falling under a different standard. So you see the integration I was trying to talk about. So if you have done what we call spotting, not covering a bigger percentage of the syllabus, an adjustment is going to come, and that adjustment is probably taking 10 marks, and that adjustment is what you did cover. So you'll find that if the mark is 1040, 10 marks is coming from one adjustment, and the person who passes that adjustment basically scores high on that question, and for you have not. If you don't know that adjustment, you lose a lot. And here I'm saying you can refer to question 1 of March 2022, question 3 of June 2022, where it was requiring the drafting of the given financial statements based on the given information. So you realize whenever you are preparing financial statements, either you are looking at application of IS 8 and the other relevant standards in IS 1, the application in IS 1. So it is not that you can study IS 1 in isolation of other standards, because the IS 1 basically combines all of the standards, because at the end of the day, all of the standards feed into financial statements. And IS 1 talks about the presentation of financial statements. So you should be able to know that all of that standards feed into IS 1. I hope there we are together. And here I want to talk about a cash flow statement, basically in particular, because it came when I don't think it came in September 2022. That was question 2. And the comments from the reporter saying that candidates failed to derive profit before interest and tax because what was given was a statement of financial position. Now you realize that because you use profit before interest and tax, to begin to adjust, to understand, to know the cash flows from operating activities. Now the question is, how can I get a cash profit before interest and tax given the statement of financial position, maybe for 2 years? Is there a way I can get to know how to find that? Because the statement of profit or loss may not have been given. And you realize that the results of the statement of profit or loss, there is a way they feed into the statement of financial position. So the question is, how can I arrive at the profit before interest and tax? So you should explore different ways of how you can ascertain certain value. Not thinking that there is one way to something, because you may be in an institution that maybe does not prepare a statement of profit or loss, but maybe they have maintained preparation of statement of financial position. The question is, if so, or if the statement of profit or loss has been manipulated and maybe has been deleted from somewhere, then how can I prepare a cash flow statement? You remember what we talked about incomplete records? Here covered under financial accounting. Here they may come into play. So you should understand, and you should should understand the movements when you go to preparation of cash flow statements. You should understand the movement in PPE, property, plant and equipment. There could have been a revaluation, there could have been a devaluation, there could have been a disposal, so that you'll be able to, there could have been a change in depreciation, so that you should be able to know if I can ascertain the actual value of how much was got from disposals or of how much was spent on acquisition. So you should look at certain things. So you'll find that the aspects in adjustment of aspects and that fall under cash flow from investing activities, PPE may come into play. IFRS 13 may come into play, fair value measurement, because they may have changed the measurement criteria of their assets. And you find the values are changing just because of that change, but not necessarily because of an acquisition or a disposal. So you'll find some effect that is appearing on PPE may even affect operating cash flow from operating activities. So you should understand how the two integrate. Then I want to talk about analysis and interpretation of financial statements, which we normally call ratio analysis. you realize that I don't expect a candidate to be able to interpret financial statements if you cannot prepare them. So ideally, you have realized that the recent, the generic questions that used to come sometime before where would be given financial statements and they tell you interpret have disappeared. The question is if you can prepare a financial statement today, can you make meaning out of it? And how do you make meaning out of it? Number one is you may need to look at different stakeholders that are going to use these financial statements. For example, I believe maybe there's some candidates here are working and maybe a number of them are working. I'm assuming that. But you realize that if you go to a bank to get a loan and you are in business, they may ask you for your financial statement. My question is, what do you think they are looking for? Now, can someone be able to analyze these financial statements and make that meaning out and maybe make a recommendation that though you are preparing this, you are presenting these statements to a bank to access a loan, chances of accessing the loan are remote. Or if you are bidding in this position or in this company, chances of getting the bid may not be possible because your financial statements are actually showing that you are doing badly. And if you are doing badly, then someone should be able to say that using figures and maybe making a comparison as why you are doing badly. Because for example, if I prepare the cash flow statement and the cash flow statement is showing negatives and it is showing that most of the cash flow that came in maybe came through borrowing, and you see that most of the non-current assets have been disposed of to gain more cash. And at the end of the day, I have an OD at my bank statement. Okay, there is more cash outflow than cash inflow, and that is affecting business operation in that kind of line. Assets have been disposed of. You've gotten many loans, and here the bid you are submitting is basically going to require that someone needs to be having probably a working capital of certain amount, or must be having cash position of certain amount. You should be able to give an advice to someone has approached you based on the evidence that has been given to you that actually, if you present this financial statement, the chances of getting the bid based on the financial statements are actually remote. You realize now where the interpretation analysis comes in. Or if you are comparing yourself with other entities within the same industry based on the performance to see whether you are still competitive. That's where the analysis and interpretation comes in, and it carries more sense. So you should know if you are to provide advice skewed to a certain angle, which ratios am I supposed to use that will give meaning? If people are interested, if shareholders are interested in trying to get to know how much dividends are they going to get, then someone is going to be interested in earning per share. Though it is not under this standard, but you'll find that if you go to the real practice, then someone must know if an investor is coming to invest, then someone is going to be interested in knowing how much is the earning per share that was probably paid for the last 2-3 years. So there you may need to compute the earnings per share. So and be able to give this person advice. So ideally, this is where the analysis and interpretation of financial statements comes. And that's why you've been able to see, that's why you've been not seeing it coming as a distinct question. But I think the examiners want it to be hinged to how it is applicable in real life. So we are saying that candidates need to note that analysis and interpretation of financial statements requirement may not be examined as standalone question, but may be combined with another requirement to reflect the real life scenario. Then what is the relevance? I think I've been talking about this, that the knowledge of this paper should be able to help you in posting any information in books of original entry, preparing books of accounts, which are the financial statements, analyzing information together with judgments, being able to identify errors. This one may be able to go to preparers of financial statements and auditors. And it should be able to be help in decision making and maybe providing evidence-based advice and guidance. And maybe for taxation purposes. Sometimes some of you may be working in URL, some may go to work in URL. So if you are going to audit a return has been submitted by someone, then you need to be having this knowledge. That's the application. So don't look at it that I'm looking at it from the angle of passing exams. At the end of the day, after passing exam, there's where you must apply. So even when you are studying, preparing for this exam, you can apply this knowledge elsewhere before even sitting for the exam. Then I want to highlight about why students basically fail. I think from what we have discussed, some of you must have highlighted a number of issues why you fail. But basically, there is a lack of adequate preparation. For example, if I've told you must prepare for 80%, you must cover 80% of the syllabus, and for you to cover 20, what happens? What do you expect of the syllabus? There are some people who already think that they are the best and maybe they can read on their own. Sometimes when you have a saying in our language that if you believe your mother is the best cook, if you have not moved to other homes, you may think that your mother is the best cook. Some of you may be relying on one side. Maybe you are studying from so-and-so's person. If that person has got it wrong from the word go, it means you are also taking the wrong thing. And probably before it will take this person to first understand that maybe has been taking the wrong approach before you can realize that actually you need to change the direction. So there are some people who depend on various instructors and they don't discuss, There's some people who depend on personal reading and they think that what they read is okay. I know you may not be happy, but I believe discussion and the guidance from a tutor or instructor can direct your reading. Because the discussion is a tell you that you are doing something wrong and maybe you need to change the direction. Then, of course, the other issue is failing to integrate or connect and relate the different standards and how they affect and feed in the preparation of financial statements. Of course, the other issue is the time management that is poor. But from what I've said in the beginning, you should be able to manage your time very well. And here, the other issue is that failure to articulate the application of different standards. You've read the standard, but you've not understood how is it applicable and how does it apply and how does it affect the preparation of financial statements. So you find it very, very hard. And you find yourself losing. So I'm saying that you may need to do more of what you have been doing. You may need to understand, not rely on specific tutors, but maybe probably combine from different tutors, have group discussions, attend such seminars because some things may never be said where you study from. But on the other side also, as you study and maybe read on your own and as you take your any approach, try to interpret and understand the application of the standard. How can they be applied in different situations? I have given a number of scenarios. If I am using a dog at home as for security, and probably I'm hiring it from a security company, is that dog an agricultural biological asset under IS 41? or I'm looking at it from a different angle. Or if you go to a security company that is hiring it to me, or they are treating that dog as a different asset, not as under agriculture. If I'm using a donkey for transport, is that donkey a biological asset in this sense, or should it be measured as a biological asset? Or it should be measured as PPE? I don't know. But you understand what I'm trying to say. So you must know. And of course, the other issue is that you must know after preparing financial statements, can I make meaning out of them? You look at the different users. You remember in financial report, in financial accounting, you looked at users of financial accounting information. You mentioned the other employees, shareholders, investors, the public, tax authorities. The question is, when they are using these financial statements, what are they looking for? Then can I interpret and analyze these financial statements based on the needs of the users? Or although I'm going to use the ratios to make a decision, but based on the needs of these users, can I be able to interpret these financial statements? Okay, Claire, I submit. That's what I had to present. I hope I have met some people's expectations. Thank you.
Thank you, CPA Bonaventure. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It was really educative. And I'm sure all of us who have attended have picked a leaf or two to help us perform better in our financial reporting paper.
Yes, I'm
when I look
seeing
at
Cassidy Lincoln has an arm up.
This one is asking for recordings.
Okay. Then,
so members, as I told you earlier, you can post your questions, comments, concerns in the Q&A.
Members, have I met your expectations? Aliko says, thank you for the presentation.
What I'm seeing. So, Fred is asking for recordings. You receive the recordings. The recordings will be sent to you.
Nabwile Rosemary has a hand up.
Okay. So I think maybe we can enable her to ask.
Someone is saying in the section, Abraham Loktai, a kind of update on the structure of the paper. The paper basically has two sections. Section A has one compulsory question. Section B has 4 questions, and you must attempt 3 of the 4 questions. Now, the question is, what should be in section A is not casting stone. Anything can appear in section A. Anything under the syllabus can appear in section A. It is not that this is what is to appear in section A. Anything can appear in section A that falls under the syllabus. So that's why it is helpful that you must prepare 80% at least. cover the 80% of the syllabus. I hope I've answered your question. Then
So,
section
Bonnie,
B.
can I allow, oh, you're still going through, but I wanted to allow Nawiri Rosemary to ask.
Okay, Nawiri, you can ask.
Nawiri, you can ask your question. You can unmute and ask.
I think she's unmuted.
Mm.
Nabila, you can ask.
I think we can just proceed with the rest of the questions.
I see someone
Maybe
is
she has
asking
failed to
for
unmute.
the video of the facilitator. I think before I leave, I'll show my face. And maybe I can share my...
Someone is saying you met their expectations. Someone is saying this one is from Birungi Mary. Thank you so much for the presentation. But my question is paper 8 more of narration and explanation than calculations?
I think, Birungi, what you have to understand is that paper 8, it basically feeds into the preparation of financial statements. So it can be both explanations, but basically the calculations are helping you to have figures to put in the extracts or in the financial statements. So you must know that whereas there is an explanation, behind that explanation, there is a calculation. Unless the explanation is basically, the question is requiring you to make a theory. Like for example, the question that was talking about the circumstance under which you must begin capitalizing borrowing costs and when you should cease. Those ones may be theoretical, but at the end of the day, after knowing that, then the question is how much are you capitalizing and how much are you expensing? Then that one comes to a computation and it leads to an extract in the financial statement.
Okay. Another one is from Waloya Joel. How much is required and important to describe? Okay, he's saying how much is required and is it important to describe or write notes?
How much is,
and
how
saying
much
what
is
is required first before proceeding with calculations. I think he's saying how much notes or description should be done before one does the calculations in a number.
Yeah. Okay, I think this one will depend on question by question, but ideally, don't expect a paragraph for more than 3 lines. If you have really understood the application of a standard, 3 lines are enough to give the examiner what is expected of the requirement. Then the rest could be a computation of a figure. Because sometimes the computation of a figure can times be speaking to the words you are going to write. But in most cases, there are some candidates who may be wanting to explain too much and forget that actually what you are explaining can be just explained by computing a figure. Okay. So it is subjective, but ideally in this paper, there is less of Rugamba, I would say. Most of them, if there is at all any Rugamba is giving a justification of a certain figure being treated the way it is being treated, but most of it is basically computation. Then someone was saying,
thank you, CPA Bonnie. I think you've responded well to Joel. Then we are going to go to Narukwago Mariam. She said, thank you, CPA Bonaventure, for the presentation. How well can one manage time with the interpretations of especially question 1?
And I mentioned in the beginning, I don't know whether you were present when I mentioned in the beginning. I said that question 1 is mandatory and it's compulsory. And if you are to attempt that question from the word go, the moment you read in the question paper, believe me or not, you are going to spend 2 hours on that question. So ideally, my advice to candidates and students is better. As you know, you're going to attempt question 1, give it a maximum of 1 hour and let it be done in the last 1 hour. Because you will feel disappointed if you find there's a number in section B and you would have answered it exactly, maybe get above 15 over 20, and you find because of 30 minutes you are left with, you are just reading the question. So it's always advisable to begin with section B, and as we begin with section B, kindly begin by reading the requirement on each question. See if you can attempt. If you can attempt after reading the requirement, then go to the question. There, as you read the question, your mind is already tickling on the requirement and how you can understand the question better in relation to the requirement. But if you begin by reading the question without reading the requirement, believe me or not, you will reach the requirement and you will go back to read the question. Now, that's what I was saying, that it's always advisable that for the first 2 hours, concentrate on the section B, then leave 1 hour for section A. Even if time will you when you are doing the compulsory question, at least you will have reached somewhere knowing that you have answered the section B. I believe Miriam will have answered your question.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'm sure Mariam is happy. This one is from Rogers. He said, thank you for the presentation, and he's asking, what complicates IFRS 3 questions?
I don't understand what he's trying to mean, but basically IFRS 3 is about consolidated financial statements. And you combine it with IFRS 10, which talks about business combination. Now you realize that the question, I think it's how you prepare for it. I talked about, in my presentation, I talked about that if we were to attempt a question on consolidation, there are some things that should be on your fingertips. One, you should be able to ascertain that there is a parent subsidiary relationship. If you cannot ascertain that, then you may not attempt a question. After ascertaining that, then you should be able to know, was there an acquisition? If it was there, what was the consideration paid? Consideration paid, I said, may take different forms, maybe in cash, it might be in an exchange, it may be in a deferred consideration, whereby you are going to pay in the future. So the question is, as you go by, there's a consideration. After knowing the consideration, the key adjustments in basically this standard is, after knowing the consideration, do you know how to treat intercompany dealings? If this is a parent and this is a subsidiary and they have dealt in a business together, one buying from the other, how do you cancel out at consolidation? And remember, it may be moving from parent to subsidiary or from subsidiary to the parent. How does it occur? If it has occurred that way, what happens? You should understand that. You should understand that where this relationship exists. Entities may sell even assets to each other. But remember, at consolidation, this asset is still existing in the group. So you'll find that if you have recognized the gain on disposal, it may need to disappear. And if you have depreciated the asset, there is some adjustment that need to be done on the depreciation because the asset is coming back to the group. So if it is inventory, you may need to look at an realized profit, but there are very many there could be intercompany borrowings of money. And when you consolidate these ones also cease to exist. What you may need to consider is maybe borrowing from outside the group. So the intercompany dealings may be, but maybe many. But my question is, those key adjustments are necessary to be understood before you can attempt a question about consolidated financial statement. Now, if in your preparation you have not been able to prepare very well, then it becomes hard. Hanifa is asking, what happened?
So, CPA Bonnie, I was thinking I give that one of Hanifa to Justus. And she's asking what happens when always someone gets 47, 46, what makes them miss the 3 or 2 marks? CPA Justus, kindly respond to that.
Thank you so much. You said that's who?
Hanifa Nachimuli.
Hanifa, thank you so much. I've heard your concern. It's like you are getting, someone gets 47 and then gets 46 and then 45. Ideally, for us, this end, we look at what you have presented. And we are also wondering, are you really doing more than you have done, more than you did last time? Most likely you are not doing things differently. And the exam sieve is finding you the same as you were. Of course, the exam is changing, meaning that you have also to adjust and change. Otherwise, if you don't change with the changing circumstances, you are likely to keep somewhere there. So you must adapt and work extra hard and put in more effort. Otherwise, it is not only you, people who have got such marks are there, but again, it is that end of yours. Kindly just double effort and leave that mark and cross the pass mark. That's what I can say about it. Just improve. But the sieve, the exam sieve is finding you the way you were, which is consistency, but we don't want it. Kindly work hard and leave that mark and pass. That's what I can say.
Thank you, CPA Justus. The reason as to why I gave that question to him is for him, he has the ability of counseling people and of giving them direction, not necessarily financial reporting, but it gives you that spiritual wisdom to look inside you and really find the answers that you may need in order to pass. So I hope, Hanifa, that was helpful. This one is from Ariko. Ariko needs guidance on the institute they can study from. So still CPA Justus, can you respond to that?
Thank you so much, CPA Claire. Ariko, got your concern as well. Thank you for that concern. We have gone through different times as a country, we are going through different times as institutions, we are going through different times as individuals. As a student, you have the modes of learning. You can read privately, you can attend a training institution, you can utilize any mode of learning that you are fit for, that you are comfortable with. But I would advise you to get a training institution that is convenient for you so that you don't spend much time going to the institution, the one nearest to you. Because if you are in Mbarara and you want to train from Kampala, it does not work. If you are staying in Mukono and you want to train in Matete, it's not good. Get the one next to you, because these trainers, to me, they can give you what you want depending on your preparedness. Just get to know what you want, look through the syllabus, look through the areas where you need guidance, understand the content that.
And also may just to add on is that some of these candidates, when they go for this training institute, wherever they go to, they should also have the zeal to ask to understand certain things from the way I presented. Someone is teaching you about PPE. The question is, what other standards are likely to be affected by just PPE? someone, a student, a bright student should be able to ask that question to a tutor, and the tutor should be in position to give an answer. But sometimes if you don't ask, someone may not think that you need that knowledge. I see Claire Nabwile has put an arm up.
I'm sorry, my network went off.
I see Nabwile's hand is up, and I think she wants to talk.
CPA Bonaventure, the question was about someone anonymous, they didn't put their names, but they're asking which tests can they use while doing financial reporting? Is there a required tense?
Ideally, the tense, there's no required tense per se, but ideally, if you look at the requirement of the question directs you on what tense to use.
Hello, CPA Bonaventure?
Yes, Claire. I can hear you, and I was just saying that the tense to use depends on the requirement of the question. If the requirement of the question is saying, advise management on the best option, if there are some alternatives, then you should advise management on the best option that becomes present continuous. Then the question, if the question is requiring the student to say, advise management on what should have been done in regard to treatment of this transaction, then you are supposed to say, it means that ideally there was an error or there was lack of information on how something should be treated, and you must tell them how they should have treated it. So you realize that the tense that is required may come from the requirement on each question. So basically, you need to watch out to what the requirement of the question requires.
Thank you, CPA Bonaventure. This one is from Owen. Over time, preparation of consolidated financial statements has featured so much in section A of the past papers. The adjustments, workings, and notes are a must. How best can a student raise marks from here?
Okay, I would say that preparation of consolidated financial statements, in simply put, if you are consolidating, basically you're adding together. So I expect that knowledge to be seen, to be articulated by a candidate, adding together. As you add together, there are some adjustments you must make to certain things. Those are adjustments. You remember when I talked about the effects of certain transactions in the preparation of financial statements? Those adjustments must have to be borne in mind, because some of these adjustments may require you to either subtract or add certain values on certain values you are consolidating. Meaning, if you fail to make that adjustment, you only score probably the other third I talked about. But the other marks that are coming as that of the adjustment you're making, you lose them. So it's better for candidates to know that if it is about consolidation, the key adjustments always come under probably goodwill, 2, retained earnings, 3, NCI, 4, intercompany dealings. If you have those 4 in your mind and understood them clearly, I don't think you may find a question on the preparation of consolidated financial statement. I remember when I talked about even when the acquisition took place and the period you are preparing the consolidated financial statement. So that one gives you to know when you should you apportion and when you should you not apportion. So there are some key notes you must understand when you are to cover a certain standard. So kindly, if you have been attentive, I believe you have taken some notes. If you take those notes I've given you, and you have to attempt a number on consolidation, you may not face any bigger challenge. I submit.
Yes, thank you, CPA Bonaventure. This one is from Anonymous. Do you have to prepare extracts to every question, or you prepare when asked?
Ideally, even if you have not been asked and you prepare an extract is an explanation. I remember someone was asking a question, how much should I explain and how much should I compute? An extract in its own self is an explanation. So someone may not want to say very many words, but prepares an extract. He or she would have explained something. The question is, I remember talking about if a standard is leading to a rise of an expense, a revenue, asset or liability, it can as well be explained by giving an extract. So ideally, as you prepare for this paper, keen interest must be given on the extract, because eventually, if we are to recognize something in the financial statements, it is coming from an extract. Even if you are adding something to a parent figure, already you are making an extract in mind, but probably here you are making a presentation. So I urge students and candidates to know that as you prepare for this paper, any standard, try to know if you can prepare extract for each standard and how each extract may appear in the financial statements. For example, we may look at I-37 and they may give you a scenario. And the scenario may be requiring you maybe to decide whether to make a provision or not. If you decide to make a provision, then there's an extract to make in the financial statements. If you don't have to make a provision and you must maybe disclose something in the notes, already disclosing something in the notes is also an extract. So whichever way, I think extracts are paramount in this paper.
Okay, thank you, Bonnie.
I see you're asking how true is it that if you do not get an average on question 1 pass paper, and you may kindly put your, someone is saying my video is off. My video is off. Okay?
No. Let's the last part slide. You just attend to the first part.
The question is that it is irrelevant whether you get a half, whether you get average on question 1, but it means if question 1 is about out of 40, and the rest of the optional questions are about 20, and there are 3, it means if you are not able to score half of the optional questions, if let me give an example, if you score half of the optional questions, and maybe you are getting 10 out of 20, 10 out of 20, that's 30. It means that if you come to question 1, you should be able to attempt and get a 20. I think the reason of scoring it average comes from the concept that unless you have been able to pass the other optional questions above the average, then it is not until you should pass this one above the average for it to pass. It comes just from the concept. If the out of 40, you get 10. What assurance do you have that the other question is out of 60? You will get 40 out of 60. You get the assumption. That's where it is coming from. How sure are you that you out of 60, you will get 40 out of 60? To get 40 out of 60 could mean that you may be so bright, and for you to have 10 out of 40 and maybe score a pass. So ideally, it's about how do you balance. So ideally, it's better to attempt all questions and be able to score them more. Otherwise, balancing these ones, it's not that if you don't pass question 1, you can fail. If you are able to pass the other optional questions, then you can still pass.
Okay, thank you, CPA Bonnie. There's one from Jack. Do I need to introduce the standard for every question attempted or every paragraph for the additional information.
Okay, I think the question, if you stick on the requirement may be saying in accordance with this standard, advise on how the transaction is going to be treated. Then there you may need to require the statement to state the requirements of the standard. But some questions and their requirements may not require to state, but it would be in order to state the requirements of the standard, because in mind, even if you had forgotten, there is the way it drives your answering. But it drives your understanding of the question, but the requirement may not be awarded a lot of marks. At the end of the day, you must apply the understanding of the standard to the scenario. So a person who says that probably in accordance to this standard, this one is going to be treated like this and this and this and this and this and this is right. But if a person says that the requirements of the standard requires this and this and this, thus referring to the question, this should be treated like this and this and this and this, it is still the same thing, I think. I hope Claire have answered the question.
Thank you, CPA Bonaventure. This last one, I think, will be answered by CPA Justus. It's from Anonymous. They are saying that they completed level 1, but they have checked their registered post box and have not received their certification or their certificate for that level. They need guidance. What could be the problem?
Thank you so much, Anonymous. Indeed, you have asked an anonymous question. Because when you say you have completed level 1 and you have not yet received the level of certification, at ICPAU we don't certify level by level. I don't know why you expect that certification that you have finished level 1. What we give you is your result statement. If you have completed level 1, you have the result slip that indicates that you have actually finished level 1. You go to level 2, if you finish level 2, you have the statement of results that indicates that you have finished level 2. We shall give you a certificate at the end of the course. When we say you have completed the course and you are now a CPA graduate. Otherwise, certification at levels, we don't do that. The result statement that you have and you have finished your level is what you can present at any level, at any place of employment, and then you proceed. Then you give the final certification when you have completed the course. Thank you so much.
So CPA Justus, maybe this person also needed to know why they are not getting that transcript at that level in their books now. Can you give guidance on that?
Okay, thank you so much, Claire. In case you don't receive notifications on your box number, if that's not what you mean, if that's what you mean rather, kindly go to students at ICPAU and put that concern that you are not receiving notifications from us, you are not receiving results from us, because otherwise when you upload, we expect you to see your results on your portal. And then we go ahead to give you the result slip hard copy. But if you don't get those notifications and those messages, those result slips, right to your inbox, kindly check with us, put that concern at students at ICPA, then we shall be able to rectify that with you. That's an isolated case. And in case anything that is that is not clear, go ahead still to make that inquiry. Where students at ICPA, we shall respond to you promptly. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, CPA Justus. I think you will as well respond to this one. When are the prize winners receiving their prizes? Ever since 2021, there has been nothing. Please clarify.
This is very interesting. Let me hope this anonymous attendee is a prize winner. Thank you so much, and congratulations for having won that prize. The prize winners receive their awards on the graduation ceremony. So the next graduation, all prize winners that have not been awarded their prizes will receive their prizes. The next graduation, which will be early next year. So just be expectant. We shall have your prizes received next year. But at graduation, that's when we award the prizes to the winners. Thank you.
Otherwise, thank you so much, CPA Bonaventure. I think I'll just end the question and answer session at that point. Thank you so much, CPA Bonaventure. I've learned a lot as well, much as I've done financial reporting long time ago. I've refreshed myself. Thank you so much, CPA Justus. You've responded to the issues pertaining to the institute very well. Thank you, ICPAU, for giving us. Yes,
but Claire, there are some people who have two hands. Nabgile Rosemary and Akele Josephine.
I think that hand has been up from the beginning. I tried to unmute, she did not speak.
Nabgile, do you have something to say? I think maybe we take it that I was done in error.
So too. Thank you, ICPAU, and still for giving us this opportunity to share as students in this students engagement seminar. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to talk about financial reporting. So at this point, I would like to remind members that we have another student engagement session starting at 5 to 7. We shall be having advanced taxation, and I know chances are high that someone is doing financial reporting as well as advanced taxation. Members, kindly keep time. Thank you for being so active. The Q&A has been flowing so well. Thank you so much. I'd like to call this session to a close.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We meet in advanced taxation.
Welcome.
At 5. Don't forget, 5 to 7.